Hey everyone, today's story is about a guy who gets reincarnated into his favorite game. But instead of becoming the hero, he's reborn as a monster. Things get even crazier when he finds his favorite heroine unconscious and decides to protect her no matter what. So with that said, let's begin the story. The protagonist walks through the lands he has been roaming for decades now. He passes by the place where he usually rests. These lands are far from human settlements. They are called the Forest of Demons. The protagonist's days always follow the same pattern. Nothing ever changes. However, something unusual happened on this day. The protagonist discovers a girl lying motionless on the ground. Looking closely at her, the protagonist realizes he knows her. Before him stands Noah Gran. The protagonist gasps, pressing his sleeves to his face. The girl is his absolute favorite character, his Ashi. The protagonist can't believe his eyes. He circles around the girl, wondering why his Ashi ended up in such a place. The protagonist recalls an episode that took place even before the main story began, in which Noah got lost in the demon world and then found her way home on her own. The protagonist hesitates, thinking he should just leave the girl alone, but then he notices how disheveled she is and decides he definitely won't do that. The protagonist picks Noah up in his arms, intending to take her away from this place. He heads home, floating above the ground. The protagonist doesn't regret for a second that he was reborn as a monster. In this place, there are people called defenders. They fight to defend the borders and protect the population from monsters. The protagonist thinks Noah has a really cool personal storyline. He likes how her attitude toward the player character has changed. At first, the girl was cold and unfriendly, but then she genuinely rejoiced at the hero's presence. The protagonist has ended up in the same game world he played in his past life. That game was called Utopia of the Fallen. The protagonist thinks that if his Ashi ends up killing him, he'll accept it without any regrets. Noah is in the northern region, in the city of Rairahai, at an orphanage. The girl reports that she has finished cleaning the gutter. The caretaker notes that Noah finished quickly. She tells her to clean the bathroom as well. She hands the girl a heavy bucket with a rag. Noah obediently agrees, glancing gloomily out the window and noting that it's already late. The caretaker irritably advises her to work without a sour expression, or else no one will take the girl in. A heavy bag of money lands in the hands of the orphanage director. The woman watches as Noah is led away in chains. The girl clenches her fist, thinking that now her life will become much easier. The chain clinks as the owner pushes Noah away with all his might. She falls to the floor. The girl asks hoarsely, "Why did you hit me?" She says she has already done the work she was assigned and insists she did nothing wrong. Her master, gripping the chain tighter, approaches Noah, reminding her that she is his slave. The girl trembles with fear, sadly thinking that this, too, is her duty. Noah sadly lowers her head. The feudal lord praises her master for bringing him a rather decent slave. The master replies that it is an honor for him. The feudal lord lifts Noah's chin and declares that he likes her. He is ready to buy the girl. Noah is given new clothes. The girl now eats at the table, and she sleeps in her own bed. It feels to her as if she has landed in paradise. Such happiness seems unreal to her. For this, she is ready to endure any pain. However, Noah didn't stay here long either. The young men and women, bound together with their eyes covered by ribbons, are led out through the gate. A young man unties them. The children look at each other in fear, realizing they are outside. The boy, freeing Noah from her bonds, explains that beyond the residential area, that is, beyond the wall, lies the world of demons. He unties the girl. Noah asks where her feudal lord is. The guy explains that he himself ordered these children to be freed. Noah doesn't understand what he means. The guy stops her and says he'll continue speaking as the defender. The feudal lord climbs onto the wall and addresses the children. He praises his slaves for a job well done. The feudal lord adds that there is far too little entertainment in this world. Noah looks up in surprise. The feudal lord announces that he has decided to give the slaves a little time to play. Monsters are closing in on the children. Finally, the feudal lord advises his former slaves to enjoy this entertainment for the rest of their lives. At that very moment, a demon lunges at one of the girls. Noah covers her face, hearing the screams of her unfortunate companions. She spits decisively. The girl releases a burst of magic, knocking the monsters back. The feudal lord leans forward, eagerly watching the proceedings. He wonders when Noah mastered magic, though he finds it impressive. However, the feudal lord knows full well that spells won't work on monsters. Noah is breathing heavily. She realizes things are looking bad. The demon strikes the girl, and Noah is knocked off her feet. She has no intention of dying in vain. Noah tells herself that the other slaves are a burden to her. The slave held by the demon looks at her with pleading eyes and, with her last ounce of strength, begs the girl not to abandon her. Tears well up in Noah's eyes and she repeats to herself once more that the others are a burden to her. The girl runs away as her fellow captives are torn apart by the demons. Noa presses herself against a tree, collapsing to the ground, exhausted. The monsters close in on her. The girl thinks she has to survive. She is alone now. A demon finishes off the last slave right before Noa's eyes. The girl can no longer see. Her body won't move. The monster lunges at her. Noa doesn't want to die and summons magic with her last ounce of strength. The demon's head explodes, its torso flying off to the side. The girl clenches her fist with all her might, biting her lip. Noa fights her way past the monsters, fending them off with magic. She screams as insect demons swarm her. Noa walks through a blooming meadow. She marvels at the beauty of the place. The girl looks around in confusion, realizing there isn't a single monster in the meadow. A butterfly lands on Noa's shoulder. Sighing, the girl thinks that this must be paradise. Noa opens her eyes. She finds herself lying in bed and, stretching, gets up. Rubbing her sleepy eyes, the girl wonders where she is. Just then, a wild boar squeezes through the door. Noa recoils in confusion. The main character enters the room, and the girl sighs, deciding that this is just another monster. The protagonist notices that Noa has woken up. The girl silently retreats to the bed and sits down on it. The protagonist doesn't know how to get her to talk, so he suggests a staring contest. Noa gives him such an angry glare that the protagonist is taken aback. The girl immediately sends him flying across the room with a blast of magic. The protagonist admits to himself that this is exactly the outcome he expected. He already suspected that Noa was beginning to realize her abilities. If the protagonist remembers correctly from his past life, then the girl possesses telekinesis, meaning she can control any objects within her range. Noa immediately confirms the protagonist's thoughts by lifting the furniture into the air. A chair flies toward the protagonist, and he barely manages to destroy the objects with his magic. Noa stares in shock at the splinters left over from her makeshift projectiles. She is amazed that the protagonist managed to destroy everything with ordinary wind magic. The girl has already given it her all. The protagonist is unlike any of the monsters Noa has faced before. She realizes that he is on a whole different level. Noa catches the protagonist off guard, and her magic wraps around his neck. She glances down at his throat. The protagonist decides that the girl is about to strangle him. Noa clenches her teeth in tension. The protagonist doesn't mind dying at the hands, or rather, by the magic, of his Oshi. At least, that's what he used to think. The protagonist pushes Noa back. The girl believes it was impossible for him to attack her in return. However, the blow sends her tumbling backward onto the bed. Seeing the protagonist looming over her, Noa decides that her end has come. The girl bitterly thinks that she fought for real and didn't give up, yet she received no reward for it. Only an endless battle to the death. Noa covers her face with her hands, indifferently deciding that her opponent can do whatever he wants with her. After lighting a fire in the fireplace, the protagonist roasts a wild boar carcass. Smelling the pleasant aroma, Noa sits up confused. She doesn't understand anything anymore. The girl vaguely recalls where the boar came from. The protagonist skewers pieces of meat on skewers, and using magic, he roasts them over the fire. Noa sits up in bed, watching the protagonist's actions in surprise. She doesn't understand why a monster would even need to cook. The protagonist turns around and wonders what emotion is written on the girl's face. When Noa lost consciousness, the main character decided to check on her, and he discovered that Noa was very tired and terribly hungry. The main character offers the roasted meat to the girl. Her mouth is watering. Noa realizes that the main character wants to treat her. She takes a skewer, admitting to herself that she doesn't understand a thing. The girl looks at the meat and gives in. She starts eating. The main character worries that he didn't add any seasoning, and he didn't even check how well it was cooked. He hopes the meat is at least edible. Then the main character sees tears welling up. He looks up, and he sees that Noa is crying. The girl realizes she's eating the most ordinary meat, yet it seems incredibly delicious to her. The food soothes her. Noa sobs, clutching the skewer with the last piece of meat. The girl weeps. The protagonist gently strokes her head. The protagonist hugs Noa. He knows about the girl's past. In the protagonist's previous life, he was truly moved by Noa's resilience, by how she coped with all her hardships and problems. In this world, humans and monsters are considered sworn enemies. Therefore, when the protagonist was reborn as a monster, he tried to avoid interacting with humans. That's how the protagonist acted. However, in Noa's case, he couldn't just sit idly by and not even try to help her. Here, his Oshi firmly grabs the protagonist's robe with her hand. Lifting her tear-stained face toward the protagonist, Noa timidly asks if he is on her side. He mentally notes that the girl has taken some brutal damage. The protagonist nods in response to Noa's question. A timid, uncertain smile appears on the girl's face. The protagonist is amazed by such massive damage. Noah asks if the main character can speak. He shakes his head. Then the girl asks if the main character understands her. The monster nods. Noah remarks that this is interesting, though she doesn't know why herself. This surprises the main character. With a nervous laugh, the girl says that all of this is just nonsense. She explains that her life has been hell since the day she was born. Noah was always treated like an object, and that was considered normal. The girl adds bitterly that no one, absolutely no one, helped her. She notes that it's ironic that her savior turned out to be a monster. Noah asks if the main character has a name. He pauses to think. He wonders if the girl is interested in his human name from his past life. After all, in this world, in this form, he doesn't have one. The protagonist shakes his head. Noah enthusiastically offers to give him a name. The protagonist freezes in shock. He never could have imagined that his Ashi would give him a name. The protagonist waits curiously to see what name Noah will give him. She thinks hard. An idea comes to her mind. Since the main character looks like a ghost, the name Rei would suit him. This play on words seems very simple to the protagonist, though it doesn't bother him. Noah asks if he likes the name. He nods eagerly. Seeing the girl so happy makes the protagonist feel joyful himself. Before Noah became the main character's Ashi, she was just an ordinary girl, but now she's right by his side. Just then, the girl's stomach growls loudly. Rei hands Noah another skewer of meat. Since the protagonist is a monster, he can't tell the girl out loud. That from this moment on, he vows to always be on her side. The protagonist holds more meat skewers next to Noah. The girl eats and, after a moment of silence, thanks Rei for everything. Putting down her meat, Noah says with a sad smile that she can't stay here. The protagonist freezes in shock, unable to believe his ears. The girl repeats that she is going to return home. Noah apologizes for leaving Rei and explains that she can no longer remain in the spirit world. She admits that she has not a single fond memory of home, but for some reason, she still feels drawn there. Looking sad, Noah stands up and says it's time to say goodbye. Rei waves her sleeve. Already standing at the door, the girl turns around and says it's time for her to go, even though it's sad to part ways. She thanks him for the delicious meat. Noah smiles sadly, says goodbye, and walks out the door. The protagonist lowers his head. He realizes that Noah is serious, and he doesn't intend to stop her when she says such things. The girl hurries away. Hearing something, Noah turns around. A monster leaps at her. Its clawed paws are already flying toward the girl's face. But suddenly, Rei appears in front of her and knocks the demon away. The protagonist simply couldn't let his Ashi go alone. Noah looks at the protagonist in shock, asking why he came. Rei wants to be her temporary bodyguard. The girl asks if the main character will go with her. He nods. Noah smiles, tears welling up in her eyes, and she tightly grabs the main character by the sleeves. She thanks Rei profusely. Evening falls. The group sits around the campfire. Noah notices that the attack with which the protagonist saved her from the monster wasn't magic, and asks if that's true. The protagonist nods, and the girl says contentedly that she knew it. Thinking for a moment, Noah adds that magic doesn't work well against demons, so you can't kill a monster with just one attack like that. She tried it herself yesterday, and it didn't work at all. Beaming, Noah concludes that Rei has tremendous abilities. She asks what specific skills he has and asks him to demonstrate them. At that moment, the protagonist's gaze falls on the girl's wounded legs, and he freezes. Noah asks what's wrong. Rei extends his hands toward the girl's legs, and a glow envelopes them. Noah watches in astonishment. The protagonist silently lists what his ability affects: physical strength and the mind. He considers adding a regeneration effect as well. Noah notices that the wounds are disappearing. The girl jumps to her feet, staring in amazement at her skin. Noah realizes that the protagonist has regenerative abilities. Rei confirms her guess. His Ashi admits that she thought he had some kind of destructive skills. This doesn't surprise the protagonist. The gap between his appearance and reality is simply unbelievable. Since his reincarnation, the protagonist has spent many years trying out all sorts of activities and has finally managed to find what heals his soul, the ability to regenerate. Smiling, Noah remarks that even though the protagonist is a monster, he possesses the power of healing. She finds this extremely ironic. The protagonist doesn't quite understand, but he decides that the most important thing is that the girl is happy. To use the ability, one must turn to their inner Holy Spirit. This is the monster's weak point. That is precisely why only those with abilities can kill the monsters. As a rule, it's practically impossible to encounter a monster with healing powers. However, Rei is an exception. He mentally agrees that there really is something ironic about this. Noah's joyful exclamation snaps him out of his thoughts. The girl sees the fortress wall of the city of Urag, where she used to live. Following his Ashi, the protagonist surmises that these lands once belonged to the Northern Kingdom. However, Due to the monster invasion, people were forced to settle behind the walls. Otherwise, they would not have survived. Noah notes that she can go on alone from here, since the border guard will watch her back. The girl turns around, tears welling in her eyes. She says sadly that Rei can go home. But before she can finish saying, Ashi, a sword pierces the protagonist's chest. Rei is stunned, and a scream escapes Noah's lips. She frantically calls out to Rei. Through blurred vision, the protagonist sees the girl's face contorted with horror. The protagonist thinks that it seems this is where he will meet his end. In reality, however, Rei doesn't think that at all. He wants to see the attacker's face. He turns around, simultaneously unleashing his wind power. The young man, armed with a sword, is blown aside. Noah looks at the protagonist in confusion. The latter, looking at his failed assassin, notes that the people from the city behave predictably. Of course, the protagonist knew the man would come, but he didn't think that he'd show up so soon. However, Rei didn't expect anything else from the border guard. The young man is just getting back to his feet. The border guard looks up, and he notices, stunned, that the protagonist's magic core is healing. Rei is surprised that his opponent can see this. Monsters usually die instantly if struck in the core with holy magic. However, Rei is no ordinary being. Just then, the border guard literally vanishes. The protagonist is taken aback, and his opponent appears right behind him. But then Noah shields the protagonist with her body, demanding that the border guard stop. She explains that Rei is her savior and asks him not to harm him. The girl uses her abilities, lifting stones into the air. The young man is surprised that Noah has abilities. His eyes widen. He recognizes Noah as the girl from yesterday. She asks him to repeat himself, and then she realizes what he means. The border guard talks about yesterday's battle between the slaves and the monsters. Noah is overwhelmed by unpleasant memories. The young man realizes that the girl managed to escape the deadly battle unscathed. He sighs and covers his face with his hand. Noah doesn't understand what's wrong with him. The young man admits that he himself was unable to deal with the monster on his own. He asks Noah to meet with the chief curator. The girl asks if he means the defender of the southern borders. He nods, and, apologizing for his rudeness, he sheathes his sword. The young man introduces himself, saying his name is Wilstale. He explains that he is the new border defender sent to the southern branch this year. Will adds that everyone, including the curator, will be very happy to know that Noah is safe. He says that now they'll go together beyond the wall, to the area where the border guards live. Glancing at Rei, Will asks if he'll be going with Noah. The girl honestly replies that when she saw the sword pierce the protagonist, she realized she couldn't abandon the protagonist. After a moment of silence, Will decides not to argue. He takes off his cloak. He wraps Rei in it and ties the resulting bundle to Noah. Will explains that they need to hide the protagonist. Rei wonders what they must look like from the outside right now. Will suggests going to town. He asks the girl her name. She introduces herself. Will reminds Noah that all border guards possess special abilities. He advises the girl and her companion to keep a low profile so that the main character isn't killed. The trio walks through the city and stops at a mansion. Noah looks around in awe, while Rei wonders why such a huge estate was necessary. Will knocks on the door and identifies himself. He warns that he's coming in. Will opens the door. The curator reproaches the young man for not waiting for his reply. He asks sarcastically if Will doesn't even think it's necessary to knock. The young man apologizes sheepishly to Liberato Rosalia, the curator of the southern borders. The curator asks him to drop the formal tone and asks, who is this girl? Noah politely introduces herself. Liberato slams a piece of paper down on the table. He jumps to his feet and places his hands on the girl's shoulders. The curator sincerely says he is very glad that Noah survived. He bows deeply before the bewildered girl. Liberato apologizes profusely for failing to stop the Lord's atrocities. Noah replies that he has nothing to apologize for. All the blame lies on the shoulders of those scoundrels. Liberato still asks her to accept his apology, and the girl agrees, forgiving him. Rei, listening to the entire conversation from his hiding place, is pleased that the atmosphere is so calm and happy for Noah. Will remarks that the curator is taking everything too personally. He adds that his mental state might not be able to handle it, and thinks all these apologies are unnecessary. Liberato says that Will is being too harsh. Noah listens to their conversation, feeling embarrassed. The protagonist, however, knows full well that Will is also glad the girl survived, and suspects the young man is at Sundara. Finally, Liberato looks up. He asks what that huge load hanging on Noah's shoulders is. He guesses that this is exactly the baggage Will wanted to talk about. The young man nods and lets the girl show her load. She agrees and takes off her cloak. Rei flies out, delighted to be freed. Liberato stares in shock at the protagonist's appearance. Will explains that he couldn't make a decision about Rei on his own. The curator honestly says he's surprised and admits he didn't expect to see a monster. He adds that this is the first time he's encountered this kind. Noah agrees with him, explaining that this is an almost impossible type of monster. She tells them that Rei saved her in the spirit world, and, grabbing the protagonist by the sleeve, adds that the protagonist doesn't attack people. Liberato begins to think aloud. Rei is clearly a special kind, radically different from the monsters known to humans. It has been 50 years since monsters first appeared, but during that time, there has not been a single mention of this type. Liberato concludes that since the protagonist is a monster, he certainly cannot be ignored. Noah reports that although the protagonist doesn't speak, he understands human speech. Liberato asks the protagonist if he is the girl's partner. He nods hastily, convinced that Noah is the object of his admiration and that it simply couldn't be any other way. Liberato is stunned. The protagonist realizes that the curator is genuinely surprised. Liberato honestly admits that he didn't expect this. Turning away, he announces that they will hold a board meeting tomorrow. At that moment, Will calls out to the curator, saying that he hasn't fully reported yet. He asks Noah if her abilities have awakened. She nods. Will asks her to become a border defender, now that her powers have awakened. He asks her to think carefully about her decision, because if she says yes, she won't be able to go back to her old life. Noah accepts Will's offer, saying she has nowhere else to go anyway. The young man smiles, and Liberato joyfully congratulates her on joining the ranks of the defenders. He asks Noah to keep a low profile at tomorrow's meeting. Then the girl reveals that Rei also possesses abilities. Her words send the border defenders into shock. Sometime later, Noah runs a bubble bath for herself, and she sinks into the warm water with delight. She's glad that everything turned out so well in the end. However, the girl isn't sure if they can live in such a beautiful house. Will approaches the building and knocks on the door. Rei, hearing him, steps away from the skillet on which she is frying meat. Will, standing at the door, politely announces that it is him. The young man is surprised to see the doorknob jiggling. The door suddenly swings open, and Will is blown back by the gust of wind. He doesn't understand why it's so drafty inside the house. Then the draft catches the surprised young man and carries him inside. Will stands up and, noticing Rei, asks if he's the one responsible. He nods. He opened the door without thinking and let the air out so the other border guards wouldn't find him. Suddenly, Will smells a pleasant aroma, and he notices the apron on the protagonist. The young man sees the frying pan and asks in surprise, is the protagonist really cooking? Will is already beginning to doubt that Rei is really a monster. The protagonist is making breakfast for Noah. He picks up an egg, realizing that it will be a bit difficult to crack. Scratching the back of his head, Will admits that the protagonist never ceases to amaze him. Rei recalls yesterday, when Noah told him that the protagonist also has abilities. Both border guard are taken aback. Will realizes from the curator's reaction that Liberato has never heard of such a thing. Shocked, Rosalia asks what the protagonist's ability is. Rei demonstrates his skill on Liberato himself. The curator feels a sacred spiritual power flowing into him. Staring at his palm, Liberato realizes with astonishment that the protagonist possesses healing magic, and of a very high level at that. Hearing the curator, a shocked Will points out that among the border defenders, only Rose possesses such a valuable skill. He calls out to Liberato, but the latter is too stunned to hear the young man's words. This memory amuses the protagonist. He finally cracks the egg in the frying pan. Will asks, where's Noah? At that very moment, a lock clicks, and both guys turn to the sound. Noah walks into the kitchen, still drying her wet hair with a towel. Her appearance leaves both the protagonist and Will speechless. The protagonist is dazzled by the beauty of his Ashi, while the border guard timidly greets the girl. She asks why Will came. The border guard hands Noah a bundle, explaining that it contains extra food supplies. The girl notes that Will already gave her essentials yesterday, and even let her stay in a beautiful house. With a gentle smile, Noah thanks the young man for everything. He replies sheepishly that he's only doing his duty and cites the curator's decree. The protagonist can't take his eyes off Noah. Her beauty is blinding, like the sun. Will is about to leave, promising to stop by for her in the evening to take her to the board meeting. The door closes behind the young man. Examining the bundle, Noah admits that she was certain that when she returned to her homeland, at best she would be made a slave again. She notes that the curator is a very kind person, even having provided a place for her to live. Rei runs his sleeve over Noah's head. He disagrees with her words and believes that the girl has achieved everything on her own. The protagonist desperately wants to tell Noah this. She doesn't understand his gestures. The protagonist is certain that the girl needs to feel a sense of self-worth. Just then, Noah inhales a pleasant scent, and she sees breakfast on the table. She thanks Rei for making her a meal. The protagonist regrets that he couldn't do anything special. Setting down her bag and sitting down at the table, the girl asks why the main character turned out to be a monster. He doesn't know himself. Noah notes that the dishes Rei has prepared soothe her. Laughing, She asks if the protagonist is trying to win her heart through her stomach. The protagonist considers taking cooking lessons. His gaze falls on the package. He's curious about what will brought, and he opens the package. Inside is a book. Alas, the protagonist doesn't know the language, and no matter how closely he examines the text, he can't make out a single word. Noah recognizes the book, realizing it's the tale of the great hero Silva. Ray decides that since the girl knows this work, it's the perfect opportunity for him to learn to read. He points at the book, and Noah realizes that the protagonist wants to read it. The protagonist opens the book and examines the letters, trying to make sense of them. From his gestures, the girl realizes that Ray is asking her to teach him to read. He nods, confirming her guess. Looking sad, Noah admits that she can neither read nor write, since she was a slave. She adds that the story is very well known, as the picture makes clear. Lowering her head, Noah apologizes to Ray. He is horrified that he has upset his Ashi. The girl suggests asking the curator to read the book to them. The protagonist nods vigorously, not wanting to upset Noah any further. Ray knows that books are a very valuable thing. In this world, only high-class entertainment is permitted. These are available to the defenders, which is why, at first glance, they seem like a rather privileged class. However, they're forced to risk their lives protecting people in a dangerous place located very close to the spirit world. For some unknown reason, abilities awaken only in young men and women. That is why only young people become border guards. Will, as promised, goes to see Noah. She is already waiting for him, standing with Ray, who is once again hidden behind her back. The protagonist once again thinks that the devil himself was responsible for the settings in this game. The girl asks what the directors are like. Will asks Noah not to worry. He replies that they are sensible people. The companions approach the building they're looking for. Will asks if Noah is ready. She nods. The young man opens the door, and they go inside. 5 directors are seated around a round table. Standing next to them is Liberato, who smiles and greets the newcomers, saying that they've been waiting for them. One of the girls, named Lilia, propping her head up with her hand, asks the curator irritably what all this means. Her neighbor squeals and asks what she saw. Rolling his eyes, one of the directors remarks that it's clearly something useless. Another member of the group agrees with him. A fragile, dark-haired girl asks anxiously if they'll have any trouble. Lilia has no intention of arguing. Liberato glances at her with a smile and remarks that her calculated behavior, given that she knows what will happen next, indicates caution. Lilia says irritably that her mentor is driving her crazy, but he just laughs. This doesn't surprise the girl, and she simply asks Liberato to stay level-headed and ends the conversation. Everyone's eyes turn to Noah. Ray is already terribly nervous about the directors. Liberato is about to introduce the group to their new companion and asks Noah to introduce herself. Taking a deep breath and closing her eyes, she quickly states her full name and says she is 18. She adds that she is happy to meet everyone. A girl approaches her and suggests they drop the formalities. Noah timidly opens her eyes. The girl's name is Rose, and she asks Noah to think of everyone as family. A man addresses Noah. He knows that she has overcome many difficulties. Smiling, the man introduces himself. His name is Eric. He hopes to get along with Noah. The girl bows, replying that she's glad to meet him. Eric laughs and waves it off. His neighbor, Albert, tells Noah that they're already on the same team, so she can relax. Pointing at the irritable girl, the man says her name is Lilia and that she's even younger than their leader. She explodes, asking what's wrong with her age. Leaning back in her chair, Lilia waves at Noah and suggests they be friends. Albert nods to the leader, signaling that it's her turn. Blushing fiercely and looking embarrassed, the girl says in a trembling voice that her name is Tsubaki. As soon as she finishes speaking, she immediately blushes all over and exhales with a sigh. Liberato congratulates Noah once again on joining their circle. She pauses timidly, thanks him, and finally smiles. Ray was very worried, wondering if the director would accept his Ashi. Now that everything has gone well, he can be happy for the girl. But then, to the horror of the protagonist who had just relaxed, Eric asks what's in Noah's backpack. Lilia also scrutinizes the mysterious backpack. Liberato calmly replies that this is precisely the main topic of their meeting today. He gives Noah a signal, and she unties the cloth. A terrified, Ray mentally begs the girl to stop. He is, after all, a monster, and so, finding himself in front of the directors, he is naturally nervous. The protagonist isn't sure if he'll survive. The protagonist leaves his hiding place and hovers over the table under the astonished gazes of the directors. Lilia's eyes widen. She jumps up from her seat, but the danger to Ray doesn't come from her. Tsubaki, her face contorted, is already flying toward the protagonist, oblivious to her companion's shouts. Seeing the girl's gaze fixed on him, the protagonist realizes with resignation that this is the end for him. He freezes helplessly. Lilia tries to stop Tsubaki with a shout, but Tsubaki hears nothing. Suddenly, Will appears before the protagonist, shielding him with his body. He manages to deflect Tsubaki's attack. Will and Rei are knocked aside. Noa calls out to the protagonist in alarm. Frowning resolutely, she summons her magic. However, Liberato stops the girl with a wave of his hand. Tsubaki lands on the floor. Her eyes fill with tears, and she says in horror that she's caused a mess. She rushes toward Will and the protagonist, and the border guard shields Rei with his sword again, just in case. Tsubaki asks for forgiveness in a trembling voice. She makes excuses, explaining that she sensed the monster's presence and didn't think about anything else. Noa calls out to Rei anxiously, helping him to his feet. She asks if he's okay. The protagonist, meanwhile, admires Will's speed. Rei himself didn't even have time to react. Lilia reminds Tsubaki that she told her to think clearly. Tsubaki replies sheepishly that she simply didn't understand her. Scratching the back of his head and smiling awkwardly, Liberato remarks that Tsubaki was, in fact, keeping herself under control. Lilia agrees, noting that Tsubaki simply shuts off her emotions when she goes into battle. She advises Tsubaki not to take things so seriously. Tsubaki timidly replies that she just isn't very good at controlling her powers. Liberato thanks Will, and Will remarks that he expected this outcome. Noa glares at them. She angrily wonders where the common sense Will told her about is hiding among the directors. Rei notices that his Ashi is gradually getting in a bad mood. All the directors finally sit back down at the table. After making sure Tsubaki has calmed down, Liberato prepares to explain everything. Pointing at the protagonist, the curator announces that his name is Rei. Silence falls over the table. The directors simply stare at the protagonist in shock. Then they surround the protagonist. Rose says it's the first time she's seen a monster save a human. Tsubaki is amazed that Rei has a mind of his own, though now she understands why the protagonist didn't resist. Albert notes that the protagonist possesses an ability, and Eric is surprised that Rei understands human speech. The protagonist doesn't like how close the directors are standing at all. Liberato reports that the protagonist's ability falls under restorative magic, and adds that he doesn't want to let such a creature slip away. Rose, pointing at herself, remarks that the protagonist's skill is the same as hers. However, Liberato explains that this isn't quite true. Rose's restorative power works in a single area with a lasting effect, while the protagonist specializes in a single target. The curator asks Rei if he explained it correctly, and Rei nods. The directors are stunned that the protagonist responded to the question. Liberato smiles smugly. He imagines what an incredible sight it would be to see Rose and Rei's magic activated simultaneously. Eric asks if the protagonist's ability is really that unreal. Liberato replies that it's simply terrifying and asks the protagonist to demonstrate his magic. He agrees. Rei approaches each of the directors in turn and shows off his powers. He is impressed by the border guard's attitude toward the curator. Liberato's words are enough to make the directors lower their guard against the monster, who wasn't even supposed to be at the meeting. Although, of course, a single monster is unlikely to cause them much harm. The protagonist couldn't even react to Tsubaki's attack. The directors are completely enthralled by Rei's display of power. They examine their hands, noting the might of the protagonist's ability. Rose remarks that the protagonist uses his skill as he pleases, adding that this power is even more impressive than her own. Liberato disagrees with her. He says that Rose not only increases her allies' survivability, but also weakens enemies within the area of effect at the same time. Liberato warns that the girl's workload is unlikely to decrease. She feigns regret at this. Rei mentally agrees with everything. The holy spirit of a person with abilities is always a plus for their comrades. But for monsters, it's certain death. The protagonist believes that his skill is simply a buff. It is, of course, more powerful than Rose's, but it can only be applied to one person at a time. For supporting the group, the girl's ability is more convenient. The protagonist thinks that AOE healing is actually quite helpful. Rose agrees with Liberato, noting that if Rei were their enemy, they'd be in for a world of trouble. However, she adds that before they fully trust the protagonist, they should closely monitor his behavior. Eric confidently declares that he's on the protagonist's side, especially since Liberato himself vouched for Rei. Tsubaki also thinks there won't be any problems with the protagonist. Albert promises that if the protagonist becomes their ally, he will accept him into the circle of directors. However, if the protagonist is an enemy, he should expect no mercy. Lilia reports that she has looked into the future and sees nothing bad there, but she still believes that keeping an eye on him wouldn't hurt. Liberato asks if the directors have made a decision. So they accept Rei, but only under supervision. Noa places her hands on the protagonist's shoulders. She's very happy that everything worked out so well and congratulates Rei. Lilia, with her hands on her hips, asks how Liberato is going to explain everything to the others. He He replies that he'll explain it gradually. He asks the girl to help him when the time comes. Turning abruptly, Lilia agrees, but only if it's proven that Rei is safe. The girl suggests they go their separate ways. Lilia praises Will for his excellent work. He briefly thanks her. Lilia reminds him with mock sympathy that the border guard had to take Tsubaki's blow head-on. She notes that not every rookie is capable of that. Will agrees that it was tough, but he managed to handle it. Tsubaki, overhearing their conversation, begins to apologize to the border guard. Liberato is very pleased that they have such capable new recruits. Noah asks the curator for a moment of his time. The girl takes Liberato aside. The protagonist follows them. Noah indignantly reminds Liberato that he didn't say a word about the dangers that would be waiting for Rei at the meeting. The curator tries to brush it off as a joke, saying that she should stop being so shy. But she sharply cuts Liberato off, demanding that he not dodge the question. The curator apologizes for not warning her, but adds that such an outcome was to be expected. Noah asks again, confused and grows sad. The protagonist mentally advises her not to pay any attention to it, since there's nothing she can do about it anyway. After a moment's silence, Noah suddenly asks Liberato if Will brought her provisions as he had ordered. The curator nods, looking puzzled. Taking out a book, the girl asks Liberato to teach her to read. Rei thinks that if this turns out to be sarcasm, he'll never forgive her. The curator, completely flustered, says he knows nothing about this book. Noah and the protagonist are astonished. With a snort, Liberato shifts his gaze to Lilia, Tsubaki, and Will as they walk away. The trio is chatting. Lilia asks where Will was before he ended up among the border guards. He replies that he was in the Order of Knights. Lilia thought so. She notices that Will still spends a lot of time there. Liberato smirks, realizing something. Rei doesn't understand what the curator's smile means. Liberato suggests that the book is a gift from Will, since the guy cared a little about Noah. The girl doesn't understand a thing, and the protagonist finds the border guard cute. Of course, the gift is worth 0 points, but Will deserves praise for the effort alone. Glancing at the young border guard, Rei decides to forgive him. Liberato asks Noah not to think anything bad. She replies that she has no complaints against Will. Giving the curator a cold look, Noah adds that she does, in fact, have questions for him, since he put the protagonist in danger. Liberato reminds her that he has already apologized. With a sly smile, Noah hands the book to the curator. The girl sets a condition. If Liberato teaches her and the protagonist to read, she will forgive him. Taking the book, the curator smiles gently and agrees. Noah is genuinely happy, and Rei is over the moon. Finally, he'll be learning the alphabet. The girl and the main character return home, and guests arrive immediately. The fair-haired woman already knows that the newcomer's name is Noah, and introduces herself as Julia. The girls exchange pleasantries. Noah is visited by other border guards who have already heard about her. Meanwhile, Rei is hiding on the second floor with Lilia, who has taken control of him. Under her watchful and suspicious gaze, the protagonist can't relax at all. However, he knows there's nothing he can do about it. The protagonist hears noise coming from the first floor and notes how lively the house has become. Lilia explains that before Noah and Rei arrived, this southern division was guarded by only 47 people. She adds with a smile that the directors value their new comrades, which is why such warm receptions are held for them. Lilia immediately says in an icy whisper that this does not apply to the main character. He recoils in surprise. The girl, after thinking it over, adds that perhaps this attitude toward him is temporary. Such a change surprises Rei. Just then, the door to the building bursts open with a crash. The newcomer asks if this house truly belongs to the new comrade, the border defender. Noah and her companions look up in surprise. The main character is also at a loss. Lilia remarks with annoyance that an annoying pest has joined them. One of the guests politely tries to find out the newcomer's name. He loudly announces that his name is Luo. He asks, "What's Noah's name?" Upon hearing the answer, Luo promises to remember her name. Widening his eyes, he asks what the girl's power is. Rei doesn't understand what he's talking about. Clenching her fists, Lilia jumps up from her seat in irritation and storms down the stairs to the first floor. Pointing an accusing finger at Luo, she fiercely reminds him that he can't just show up at someone else's house without permission, especially to see a girl. Lilia wonders if the guy has any common sense at all. Luo advises the girl not to pay attention to such trifles. She insists on her point. Julia recognizes Lilia, greets her, and asks if she was in the house too. Lilia nods, adding that that isn't the point right now. Luo calls out to Noah again, and asks her to demonstrate her power to him. Noah doesn't understand what he's talking about, and asks him to repeat himself. Luo replies that power is power, nothing more and nothing less. The girl is still none the wiser. After a moment's pause, she says that if Luo means strength, then hers isn't that great. He lowers his gaze, and then he says that such an answer makes no sense at all. Luo adds that he wants to measure Noah's power. Lilia demands that he stop, and Julia rolls her eyes, fully aware of what's about to happen. Luo finds what he thinks is the perfect solution. Pounding his chest, he challenges Noah to a fight. The girl looks at him in bewilderment. Lilia says irritably that she's already sick of all this. Ray is sitting upstairs. The protagonist feels uneasy when he hears someone shouting the word power at the top of their lungs. Smoothing her hair, Noah asks, confused, if understood correctly that Luo wants to fight her. He nods. Lilia tells him irritably to fight Liberato if he's so eager to brawl. Luo objects, insisting that he needs to test Noah's power specifically. Lilia demands that he shut up, and she throws him onto the table. She adds that the situation is complicated right now, so Luo should come back later. He tries to break free from Lilia's grip. Noah glances at them. Julia gently takes her hand and apologizes for what happened. Lilia is now trying to pry Luo loose as he's clinging to the table. Julia explains that the guy always acts this way when newcomers come to them, who was also a victim of Luo's in the past. Julia asks Noah what she plans to do and whether she'll fight. Noah asks if she can refuse. The other girl points out that Noah has nothing to lose by giving it a try. Lilia chimes in, saying that the battle is a great opportunity to see how strong the newcomer is as a border defender. Luo shouts that it's a good idea. Lilia is furious that the guy is right. Noah pauses to think. Then she asks for a minute and heads up the stairs. Luo decides she's gone to prepare for the fight, and he jumps to his feet with joy. He runs out of the house, saying he'll wait for Noah at the training center. Lilia yells for him to at least listen to the end first. Noah goes up to the second floor. Leaning over the railing, she quietly asks if Ray heard her conversation with Luo. The girl asks what the protagonist thinks. He believes that with people like that, it's better to listen to their requests. However, Ray decides that it's most important for Noah herself to understand what power she possesses. To the girl's surprise, the protagonist walks into the room and brings something out. He places a suit of armor in Noah's hands. The girl recalls that this is from the stockpile. Noah asks if this means Ray isn't opposed to fighting Luo. He nods, thinking that the girl should gain some combat experience. Smiling, Noah agrees, deciding to accept the challenge, since she is now a border defender too. The protagonist wishes her luck. He believes in Noah. Lilia approaches the pair. She declares that the protagonist will stay behind to guard the house. Ray is stunned. Noah is at a loss. But then she says goodbye with a smile. The protagonist waves goodbye to her and lies down on the bed. He really wanted to see how Noah would fight. Lilia and Noah arrive at the training center. Luo is already waiting for them. A few people have gathered in the stands. They know that Luo will be fighting the newcomer. Liberato is there too and can't wait for the match to start. Luo steps forward, noticing that Noah has come after all. The girl turns at the sound of his voice. Luo tells her he's been waiting for her. Noah looks at him silently. The guy asks if she's ready. Lilia tells Noah that she doesn't have to go easy on Luo and can fight with all her might. He eagerly agrees. Lilia advises the girl to test everything she's capable of right now. Noah nods. Luo asks the girl not to worry and promises to give her a head start. Lilia angrily reminds him that this is a training session. Luo nods and jumps up and down with excitement. Lilia squints contemptuously, while Noah presses her hand to her chest in alarm. The future opponents stand facing each other. Lilia announces that the rules are simple. The fight will end either if one side surrenders first, or if she stops them herself. The director asks if everyone understands, and both opponents nod. Lilia orders them to begin the fight. Luo immediately springs into action, and with a powerful leap, he soars into the air. Noah throws up her hands, amazed by the power of her opponent's jump. Luo raises his fist, preparing to strike. But, to his surprise, he hovers above the ground. He realizes he's floating in the air and concludes that this is Noah's ability. Luo notes that the attack is quite powerful. Then, to everyone's amazement, the boy breaks free from his bonds and rushes back into battle, declaring that the girl is far too naive. He demands that she show him more. Noah dodges, and Luo slams the ground with all his might. The girl recoils. She quickly uses earth magic, mentally commanding the guy to turn into mud. Luo seems to be sinking. His hand sinks into the ground. Luo is confused. Noah is quite pleased with what is happening. Then Luo activates his magic, striking the ground with his free hand, and he breaks free, getting back to his feet. Noah covers her face from the splashes of mud. Luo notes that this is a rather interesting way to fight. Smiling broadly, the guy cheerfully says that he's actually starting to have fun. Noah frowns. She's stunned by how Luo keeps breaking her spells with brute force. She can't even knock her opponent down with magic. She wonders if there's any other way and looks around. Julia notices that Noah is looking around. Liberato thoughtfully recalls that the girl has telekinetic powers. He wouldn't want to face such an ability in the city, where there are so many different objects. But Julia sees that there are no objects in the arena. Liberato wonders what Noah will do. The girl understands all this, but knows she has to try anyway. She lifts stones into the air. Luo is already charging at Noah. Julia sees that the girl wants to use small stones. Liberato notes that there are quite a few of them. Noah is going to create the right moment for herself. When Luo dodges, the girl will have to find the guy's weak spot. Everything is going as Noah planned. Luo covers his face with his hands, exposing his body to the stones. Julia doesn't understand why he has to take the hits head-on. Eric assures her that he doesn't have to do that. The director explains that Luo is acting this way because he moves faster than he thinks. The guy is clearly in pain. Eric says with a smirk that he wouldn't go along with something like that. He knows that Luo's ability will help him get out of this. The guy actually does just that. He uses an ability called body enhancement. Luo loudly declares that the stone strikes won't affect him. Noah drops his hands in defeat. Luo repeats the name of his ability again. He proudly declares that such a simple ability suits him perfectly. Noah wearily agrees with him and attacks again. The audience is amazed that the girl is still landing blows on Luo. One of the spectators admits that if he were in the guy's shoes, he would have given up immediately. Luo, however, continues to dodge. Eric leans toward Liberato and asks skeptically if it's true that only 2 days have passed since Noah's abilities awakened. The curator nods. Julia asks again, stunned. Her words reach the rest of the audience. Eric notes with satisfaction that an extremely talented newcomer has joined the ranks of the border defenders. Julia, watching the exhausted Noah closely, notices that the girl is already struggling. She asks the curator if they should stop the fight. Liberato watches the grapple thoughtfully. He reminds them that he's put Lilia in charge of judging the match. Since she hasn't stopped the fight yet, it means the time hasn't come. Noah dodges Luo's attack and, thrown off balance, loses her footing. The guy smirks and thanks Noah, leaning over her to deliver the final blow. But then the girl flies off to the side. Luo is stunned, not understanding what that move was. It seems Noah managed to move herself using her ability. The girl realizes that her end has come. Luo is intrigued and ready to continue the fight. Just then, Lilia steps between the opponents and declares that it's time to end this. Luo tries to argue, but the director stands her ground, declaring that the boy has already won. The heated fighter wants to keep fighting a little longer, but Lilia sharply declares that the battle is over. Noah is breathing heavily. Clapping her hands, Lilia orders Luo to be taken away before he starts causing trouble. Eric and Liberato drag the out-of-control guy away. Turning around, the director tells Noah that her last move was really cool. Liberato praises the girl, advising her to go rest. Luo, beaming, shouts to Noah that she has great power and thanks her for the match. The exhausted girl, sitting right on the ground, timidly asks if it's really over. Luo suggests they rematch sometime. Noah admits with a heavy sigh that she's very tired. Lilia pats her on the head, saying she did a great job, especially since her opponent was Luo. Noah quietly remarks that they haven't finished the battle. Lilia replies that it's no big deal. The match was truly intense. Suddenly, spectators from the stands rush over to Noah and surround her. Julia happily praises the girl, assuring her that she was incredible. The others comment on her cool and unusual moves. Noah doesn't even have the strength to stand up. Lilia gently asks if she can take her hand. Noah doesn't understand what's happening and can't believe she's actually being praised. The girl feels her eyes growing heavy. She's also terribly hungry. Ray flashes before her eyes, and Noah decides to ask him to cook something for her when she gets home. Lilia sees that the girl's head has fallen onto her shoulder, and she notices with surprise that Noah has fallen asleep. Meanwhile, Ray collapses onto the bed with a sigh. Noah has gone to fight Luo. The protagonist is getting terribly bored. At that moment, a voice comes from behind him, politely apologizing. Ray turns around abruptly and recognizes Tsubaki, who is sitting right on the floor. She explains that she has temporarily replaced Lilia to keep an eye on the protagonist. The director introduces herself. Her full name is Tsubaki Aranami. She apologizes for what happened during the director's meeting at. The protagonist leans over the edge of the bed. He doesn't understand when Tsubaki managed to enter the room or why she's sitting in such a polite posture. The girl's name, Ray, sounds familiar. Even though he has forgotten a lot from the game, he remembers Tsubaki. This is not surprising, since with such a childlike, innocent appearance, the girl is 22 years old. She is a year older than Liberato himself. It turns out that of all the defenders of the southern borders, Tsubaki is the oldest. Her appearance is deceptive, for the girl becomes completely emotionless when she enters battle. That's exactly what happened during their clash at the director's meeting. At that moment, Tsubaki reminded Ray of the cyborg samurai. That was exactly what the players called her back in the protagonist's day. He, however, could never have imagined that one day he would experience her blow firsthand. Tsubaki gently calls out to Rei, snapping him out of his reverie. She asks if the protagonist is skilled with magic. He nods. He's been practicing for decades. Tsubaki admits that she isn't very good at using magic. The girl asks Rei to teach her. The protagonist pauses to think. He figures that an enemy's magic would have little effect on Tsubaki, given her combat prowess, so she doesn't really need magic herself. The protagonist wonders how he's even going to teach the principal magic. Tsubaki pleads with Rei, her words coming out in a childish lisp. The protagonist is charmed by her pronunciation. Tsubaki adds that it would be better if the protagonist demonstrated it to her, because she can see everything with her ability. Now Rei understands what ability the girl possesses. Tsubaki is a clairvoyant. She is able to see everything and everyone within a 360-degree radius. She can also observe multiple locations at once, like a hidden camera. Tsubaki can also see right through things. Thanks to this, she can detect magical power and holy spirits. The protagonist realizes what the girl is up to. Tsubaki will be able to mimic the spell simply by observing the flow of magical energy. Rei nods, deciding it's time to begin. Tsubaki's eyes light up. The protagonist is about to use simple, non-lethal magic. The protagonist releases his inner magical power. Then he combines it with the magical elements in the air. This is how Rei manages to summon wind magic. The protagonist creates a powerful gust of wind. Tsubaki watches the protagonist in shock. Her eyes shine with amazement. Rei believes that such spells will be sufficient for the magic of this world. The main character is greatly helped by the fact that he doesn't need to speak the spells aloud. Tsubaki is going to try it herself. The girl summons the magic, but she immediately gasps in disappointment. The wind she summoned vanishes instantly. Rei notices that the air current has dissipated. Tsubaki drops to her knees and hangs her head dejectedly. She reminds the protagonist of a puppy. Tsubaki tries again. Rei watches her and realizes that the girl isn't very good at channeling magic. He watches Tsubaki and mentally encourages her, moving close to her. To the girl's amazement, a powerful gust of wind bursts from her. Rei realizes that this is because he got too close to Tsubaki. The protagonist wanted to help the girl. He summons magic himself, intending to try something. Tsubaki notices with surprise that the spells are merging. The protagonist praises the girl, advising her to remember this feeling. Magic bursts confidently from Tsubaki's palm. Gusts of wind envelop the girl, and she gasps in delight. Tsubaki is genuinely happy that she succeeded. Rei thinks she did everything perfectly. He believes Tsubaki has a good instinct. The protagonist has been using magic for decades. If he really managed to help the girl, he's very happy about it. Tsubaki calls out to the protagonist in a trembling voice. She asks him how she can stop the magic now. He freezes in shock. Rei lifts his head, hurriedly pointing in a direction. The girl simply needs to sever her connection to the magical elements. Tsubaki frantically grabs her own hand. The protagonist realizes that if the girl remains connected to the elements, her magical power will dry up. Then Tsubaki will experience nausea, dizziness, and fatigue. The girl snorts, realizing something. The protagonist can't believe that Tsubaki has connected the elements, and now she can't break the link between them. The girl voices her fears. A little longer, and her magical power will be gone. Rei is horrified by this. He hurriedly catches Tsubaki. The protagonist knows that connecting with another person's magical power is dangerous. That's why he wanted her to handle it on her own. However, Rei can't even bring himself to say that to Tsubaki. The protagonist releases beams of magic. These surround the girl's spell. Tsubaki realizes that the protagonist is controlling her magical power. The girl covers her mouth with her hand. Rei apologizes to her in his mind. It's the first time he's resorted to this method, and he asks Tsubaki to be patient for a moment. It's the only way they'll be able to stop the magic. The protagonist mentally urges the magic to stop, wishing for it to end already. The magic stops as if on command. Tsubaki stares in shock at her own palm and announces in a trembling voice that they've succeeded. She thanks Rei profusely. The protagonist realizes with relief that they've gotten away with it. Looking at Tsubaki's astonished face, the protagonist notes that she didn't seem to have a strong reaction, and that makes him happy. Just then, Noa's voice rings out, announcing that she's back home. She and Lilia go up to the second floor. Lilia narrows her eyes suspiciously. Lilia abruptly asks what Rei and Tsubaki are doing. The protagonist welcomes the girl back and says he asked the protagonist to teach her magic. Lilia asks again, skeptical, not understanding why Tsubaki herself would need that. Tsubaki remarks that she can't stand it when people speak to her in that tone. Rei wonders which of the girls is older. Noa collapses onto the bed, exhausted. The protagonist welcomes her back. The girl turns her head with difficulty and asks the main character to make her something to eat. Rei realizes that Noa wants a quick snack and wants to grant her request, but something stops him. The protagonist doesn't know if he's allowed to go downstairs. He looks questioningly at Lilia, leaning on the railing. She tells the protagonist not to worry, explaining that there's no one else in the house besides them. Rei silently thanks the girl for her insight. Just then, Noah throws herself at the protagonist with a scream, hugging him tightly. She demands that he make her something to eat right away. The protagonist doesn't understand what's going on with the girl today. He mentally asks Noah to wait a moment. Rei's going to cook something as quickly as possible. Under Lilia's watchful gaze, the protagonist gets to work. A tired Noah sits down at the table. Soon, the protagonist sets down a plate of food. Lilia notes that the dish really does look appetizing and asks if Rei has prepared something for her and Tsubaki to eat as well. Tsubaki's mouth is already watering. The protagonist nods in response to Lilia's question. She praises him. Tsubaki realizes that Rei can cook, too. The directors clear the plates. The protagonist brings food to the exhausted Noah. The girl starts eating. After just a few bites, Noah closes her eyes, falling asleep right at the table with a sandwich in her hands. Rei realizes that the girl is truly very tired. He figures that Noah is so exhausted because of her fight with that strange guy, Luo. The girl mumbles, noting that the food is very tasty. With a faint smile, Noah thanks the protagonist. Rei mentally calls his Ashi a good girl, and he pats her on the head, telling her not to rush. Both directors glance at him. Lilia asks if the main character, Noah, is something like a guardian. Rei pauses to think. He did take her in at some point, and he truly, without a doubt, adores his Ashi. Noah looks questioningly at the protagonist, taking her eyes off her sandwich. With a chuckle, the protagonist suggests that his paternal instinct has simply kicked in. Lilia suggests that Noah find a mentor to teach her martial arts. Seeing the confusion on the newcomer's face, the director explains that she saw great talent in Noah when she fought Luo. Noah admits that it was the first time in her life she had fought a person. Lilia asks again, stunned. Pointing a fork at Noah, the director asks if the girl knows that Luo is in the top class for hand-to-hand combat. Lilia adds that with the kind of strength she saw in the newcomer, she simply needs to find herself a teacher. Rei would also very much like to see how his Ashi fights. Noah asks the two directors, "Which one of you will be my mentor?" Lilia replies that they aren't suited for the task due to their abilities. Noah asks what the girl's abilities are. Lilia begins to explain. Tsubaki's ability, as the protagonist already knows, is called clairvoyance. The girl can see literally everything, with no blind spots whatsoever. Lilia adds that such omnipotence is terribly annoying. Tsubaki asks her not to speak so rudely. Deep down, Rei agrees with Lilia on some points. Noah isn't particularly impressed by this ability. Lilia remarks that if Tsubaki had used her ability during the battle with Luo, she would have won decisively by a wide margin. Noah listens to the director, skeptically. Tsubaki asks him not to make that kind of face. The protagonist realizes that Noah is in shock. Lilia, smiling smugly and patting her chest, announces that her ability is seeing the future. She explains that she can see a few seconds of what is about to happen. The protagonist realizes something, recalling Lilia's behavior. Noah, licking her plate, asks if that ability means the principal isn't a passionate person. Rei doesn't understand why she said that. Lilia shouts indignantly that such words are rude. The protagonist clears away the dirty dishes. Noah, after thinking for a moment, notices that both girls have the ability to see the future. She asks which of the two directors is stronger. Lilia immediately declares passionately that she is more powerful. She claims that, as someone capable of seeing into the future, she has no equal. Tsubaki points out that even if the girl can foresee actions, there's still the attack that will strike her directly. The director cuts herself off mid-sentence, saying she won't continue so as not to scare Lilia. Noah sighs awkwardly as she watches the girl's argument. Rei believes that both directors are equally powerful. Tsubaki confidently declares that even without her powers, she will be able to achieve a complete and unconditional victory over Lilia. The girl protests indignantly. The protagonist thinks that Tsubaki is stronger after all. Noah hurriedly says that she understands everything now. She asks which of the girls will ultimately become her mentor. Lilia and Tsubaki exchange glances. Noah, with Rei behind her, approaches Liberato and asks him to be her mentor. He remarks that now it's his turn. The protagonist recalls that Liberato is the head of the organization. Lilia peeks out from behind Noah and points out that the curator, the only one of the directors, has offensive abilities. She adds that it will be easier for the newcomer to understand Liberato. Tsubaki isn't with the trio, since it's her turn to be in charge of dinner today, so she went home. The curator nods and stands up from his seat. The protagonist knows that Liberato's ability is transformation of holy energy. The curator is capable of using magic by transforming holy energy. Because of this, magic that usually doesn't work on monsters gains a special advantage against them. However, If you don't know how to use magic, this ability becomes useless. Tsubaki then explained that Liberado's magical technique is top-notch. She admitted that she had never seen such a colossal amount of magic and holy energy. Tsubaki is certain that the curator has no equal in direct combat. Rei himself is also confident in his magic right now, but the full power of the original Liberado might very well be too powerful even for the protagonist. Rei thinks the curator is a true leader. Liberado recalls that he promised to teach Noah and Rei the alphabet. The curator decides that since a suitable opportunity has presented itself, it's worth starting lessons right away. He invites Noah to go to the training hall. Liberado entrusts Rei to Lilia and asks her to teach him the letters. Picking up the protagonist, the girl agrees. The protagonist bursts out of his hiding spot with excitement. He looks forward to his lessons and the chance to communicate. Noah and Liberato walk down the hallway. The curator is surprised by the girl's eagerness to start lessons right away, since she hasn't even had a chance to properly rest from the battle with Luo. He reminds her that he asked her not to overdo it. Noah explains that she's so energetic thanks to Rei's cooking. This surprises Liberato. Noah adds that she's used to short breaks, and notes that she even managed to take a little nap today. The girl says gratefully that she feels very cozy and comfortable in this place. She adds that she'll try to get stronger so she doesn't lose all of this. Liberato says that hearing those words has put his mind at ease. He promises the girl that he'll try to be a good mentor to her. Liberato and Noah enter the training hall. The curator points the girl toward a target and suggests she destroy it using her power. Noah unleashes her magic at the target and destroys it. The curator draws his conclusions. He asks how she usually uses her ability. Noah replies, puzzled and uncertain, that she channels her skill through her fighting spirit and with all her strength. Liberato announces that he'll try it too. He tells the girl to try to feel the flow of holy energy. First, the curator summons magic. Then he activates an ability called Application of Holy Energy. Liberato releases a burst. The target burns up. Noah watches in shock. Noticing the girl's reaction, the curator explains that the organ that transforms magical power into magic and the organ that controls abilities may be one and the same. Noah quietly repeats this to herself. Liberato explains that there is a theory that an ability is a person's own original and unique magic. The girl realizes that her magic is hers alone. The curator notes that if she pays attention to this, the way she uses her magic will change as well. Noah summons her magic, watching the spells closely. When the girl thinks about what Liberato said, the sensation changes. Noah releases a blast that completely incinerates the target. The girl is stunned to realize that her power has increased. Liberato watches in admiration as well, and he smiles. The curator can't believe that Noah's consciousness has evolved to such an extent. Lilia looks up from her book. She notices with surprise that Liberato and the newcomer have already returned. Laughing, the curator says he taught Noah everything and nothing at the same time. He explains that the girl absorbed everything like a sponge, and cheerfully declares that it's immediately obvious she's his student. Liberato adds that today's lessons are over. Lilia remarks that it's an amazing coincidence, and, smiling, says that they've managed it too. She points to the phrase Rei has formed in the air. The protagonist has written, "How fast you are." Liberato is shocked. He asks, did the protagonist really learn all the letters? Rei replies that he hasn't learned them all yet. Noah realizes that Rei spelled out the words using water magic. Pointing at the phrase, the girl passionately tells Liberato that she wants to learn the letters too. She adds that she also wants to talk to Rei. The protagonist joins his Ashi's request. He writes that he also wants to talk to Noah. In his mind, the protagonist adds that his desire is driven by his admiration for the girl. Liberato bursts into cheerful laughter. He wonders if Rei is really a monster. The curator thinks that right now, the protagonist looks like a clumsy father trying to talk to his daughter. Lilia chimes in that the protagonist really does resemble a human. Noah asks them not to have fun without her. Liberato hurriedly apologizes and tells her that Rei desperately wants to talk to the girl. The embarrassed protagonist writes that he didn't mean it that way. Lilia notes that the meaning was the same. Noah begs him to teach her the alphabet right now. Rei points out that it's already nighttime. An idea pops into the protagonist's head. He uses magic, and a not-so-pleasant sound rings out. Everyone turns to look at the protagonist. Lilia asks if Rei did that. The curator asks what that nasty sound was. The protagonist apologizes, explaining that he wanted to try talking using magic. The protagonist realizes that this is much more complicated than he thought, so his plan will take a long time to carry out. Liberato points out that even just making a sound is a huge achievement, let alone the ability to speak. Noah asks in astonishment, and she asks excitedly, will Rei really ever learn to communicate? She wishes the main character luck with all her heart. He beams. He promises to try his best. Liberato stands up and suggests they call a day. Just then, Lilia sees something using her ability. She hurriedly orders the protagonist to hide. There is a knock at the door. A voice announces that Mitra has arrived and asks for permission to enter. The protagonist hides under the table, while Liberato calmly invites the guest in. Mitra enters the room, apologizing for interrupting. She notices Lilia and Noah and greets them. The director waves back. The curator notes that Mitra is late today and asks what happened. The girl reports that a representative of the patrol unit has arrived and that he came without a caravan. Liberato's expression darkens. He nods and beckons Mitra to follow him. He entrusts all other matters to Lilia, and she briefly agrees. When the curator and the guest leave the room, the director allows Ray to come out of hiding. Ray immediately asks, "What is the patrol unit?" Lilia explains that it is an organization of people with abilities whose job is to protect those who travel the roads connecting the cities of the Kingdom of Einar. These roads are called the Kingdom's circulatory system. The protagonist had believed that the patrol squad was an independent organization. Noah listens to the explanation, looking confused. Lilia admits she has a bad feeling, since the squad arrived when the person they were supposed to be guarding wasn't there. Liberato asks if his companions are certain of what they're saying. They nod. A representative of the patrol reports that the territory of the Marquis of the Grand Al Empire, which borders the kingdom to the northeast, it has been completely destroyed. Liberato and Mitra listen to the report with grim faces. The curator cannot believe that the Empire's border region has been destroyed. He recalls that for the past dozen or so years, there have been no reports of lands under the direct control of imperial aristocrats being attacked by monsters. He finds it hard to even believe it. The representative of the patrol unit agrees with him. After all, the Empire's defense capabilities are at high level. The man is concerned about the appearance of Parade, Jester, and In's beauty. He worries that all of them might attack at the same time. Lilia wonders if this isn't already too much. Ray and Noah watch, bewildered. Liberato, clasping his head wearily, agrees with the director and adds that the fact remains a fact. Noah timidly asks what he means. Liberato decides to tell her, since such a good opportunity has presented itself. The curator begins with Parade. This is a phenomenon in which an intelligent monster, known as a unique specimen, leads other monsters, gathers them into a pack, and attacks human territories. Noah turns to Ray. She realizes that the unique specimen controls the monster's minds, just like a protagonist. Liberato objects, explaining that it works more like it does with monkeys. He says that's why the border defenders can hold their ground against a single Parade. Liberato states that the problem lies in two other forces that humans must be extremely cautious of. The first of these is Jester. A man named Ike's claim that since no one knows when they will die, in such a world one must live as one pleases. This preacher was the founder of a dangerous group that espoused a fleeting and hedonistic lifestyle. Among its leaders were those who possessed special abilities, and there are even records indicating that they destroyed a small nation. The second danger is In's beauty. This group accepts the demise of humanity and their own death, and acts with the goal of bringing about the end. Almost everything related to the members of this movement is shrouded in mystery. Neither the size of the group nor the whereabouts of its followers are known. This is where the danger lies. Ray realizes that there are even more terrifying people in this place. Noah realizes that the enemies of the border defenders aren't just monsters. Lilia notes that in their world, there are also those who simply go mad. Ray recalls that in the original, there was nothing else besides Parade. He wonders what these troublesome phenomena are. Liberato explains that if all these forces attack at once, the border defenders simply won't be able to hold out. However, since this actually happened in a neighboring country, they can no longer treat this problem as someone else's. Liberato concludes that they need to be prepared for anything. Ray looks up in surprise. Meanwhile, a monster resembling a squirrel is being cut in half. The fighter sitting on a branch asks anxiously if there are any abnormalities. The one who finished off the monster answers him. He says everything is fine. There is just one creature nearby. The first one asks indignantly if the fighter checked the area thoroughly, since the monster got so close. At that moment, to the surprise of his companions, someone loudly praises them. They realize that Will's team has arrived to relieve the guard. Julia praises the fighters again. That team leaves, looking back anxiously. Noah notices that everyone is on edge right now. Will says that the possibility of a parade cannot be ruled out. People's behavior is quite understandable, since there are too many alarming details in the information they received. Julia, still smiling, says that if this atmosphere continues for more than a week, even her mood will start to go to hell. Will and Noah exchange glances. The girl calls out to Julia and suggests going to her place for lunch after the guard duty if the blonde doesn't mind. Noah adds that Will come too. The guy says it's a good idea, since maintaining friendship within the team is very important. After a moment's thought, Julia agrees with a happy smile. She looks forward to lunch at Noah's place. Will's team arrives at Noah's house. Liberato greets them with a smile. The protagonist freezes with a cup in his hands. The curator thanks Noah for bringing her companions to the house. Julia's eyes widen. Her mouth drops open. Clutching Noah's clothes, the girl remarks in a trembling voice that there's a monster in the house. Noah tells her not to worry. Julia asks why the monster is with Liberato. Will replies that they're together and there's no problem. Julia asks again, shocked. Ray feels sorry for her. Julia remarks in shock that she was just about to eat. With a heavy sigh, Mitra enters the room, leaning wearily against the doorframe. Seeing the boss, she asks, "Who is that?" and hopes to receive a proper explanation. Lilia and Eric appear behind Mitra. The director briefly reports that they've brought the girl. Eric advises Mitra to enter the room. After a pause, she asks again, "What is this?" Ray asks Liberato why Mitra isn't saying anything. He replies that it's better to see something once than to hear about it 1,000 times. Still in shock, Julia and Mitra are seated at the table. Will apologizes to Julia for scaring her, and Noah promises they'll definitely eat. Lilia and Eric tell Mitra to relax. Ray notices the girl's glances. The protagonist writes that first and foremost, they need to introduce themselves. The girls are completely baffled. Julia can't believe that a monster is writing letters. Noah practices. She manages to read what the protagonist wrote. He tells them that his name is Ray, that he isn't a bad monster, and that he's glad to meet them. Noah reads everything correctly, and the protagonist beams with joy. Julia and Mitra introduce themselves in turn. Lilia notes with satisfaction that Noah is already reading well. Noah modestly replies that she's trying her best. The protagonist pats her on the head, praising Noah. Julia, watching them, is convinced that everything really is all right. Liberato tells her and Mitra why Ray ended up in this place. The girl realizes that the main character is special. He's just placing cups in front of her and Julia. Mitra gives him a suspicious look, and she begins to speak. Even if the protagonist is different from the rest, the problem is that people are wary of monsters. Mitra asks, where's the guarantee that Ray won't betray them? Without solid evidence, everyone will simply panic. Liberato replies that this is why Mitra and Julia were the first to be told about the protagonist. The former sternly promises that if the protagonist betrays them, she will turn him into her puppet using her soul intervention ability. Liberato calmly replies that if Mitra fails, they'll simply kill Ray, just like any other monster. The curator hopes it won't come to that. The protagonist glares at him. Liberato manages to explain everything to his companions while simultaneously threatening the protagonist. Ray finds the curator to be an extremely unpleasant character. He smirks and adds that they also possess Lilia's ability, foreseeing the future. The girl nods at Mitra. Julia, meanwhile, is thoroughly enjoying her tea. Mitra remarks that these are all flimsy reasons for sparing the monster. Liberato reminds the girl of the report from the squad that surveyed the lands. The curator notes that things are getting more and more alarming and tense with each passing day. It's still unclear when they'll be drawn into a fierce battle. That's exactly when they'll need Ray's strength. Liberato plays his trump card. The main character possesses an extremely valuable healing ability. Julia spits out her tea in surprise, and Mitra's eyes widen. The curator smirks contentedly. Julia, having caught her breath, asks why Liberato didn't tell them this right away. Ray thinks everyone else finds the situation amusing, but the team members stand with grim expressions. Liberato smiles, apologizes, and says he just wanted to buy a little time. Mitra tells him she hates any kind of hassle, but the curator always tries to make sure the number of worries doesn't increase. She declares that she recognizes Ray, and Julia agrees with her. Liberato sincerely thanks them. The protagonist notes that the curator is quite a serious man and assumes he's popular. Liberato, apologizing for getting straight to the point, says he has a request for Will's team. The young border defender immediately becomes wary. The curator asks the team to go to the monster world on an investigation. He sends Ray along with them. Ray looks up from the stove in surprise. This will be his first job. Will asks when they'll be leaving. Liberato replies briefly that they need to leave tomorrow. Julia asks again in surprise. The protagonist is happy that he'll finally be going somewhere with Noah. The girl calls out to the protagonist, and with a smile, she suggests they work together. So Will's team and the protagonist are asked to conduct an investigation in the monster world. The four of them find themselves in the restricted zone of the outer border guarded by the defenders of Olag Castle's walls. Julia points out that their regular patrol area has always been in this region. She suggests that thanks to Ray, they'll be able to go much further. Will nods and notes that as long as the protagonist is with them, it'll be harder for monsters to attack them. He turns to Noah for confirmation. She replies that this is indeed the case. Noah explains that, unlike the time she spent alone, while she was with Ray, she wasn't attacked by monsters at all. Julia was convinced that the protagonist would serve as some kind of bait or lure. Noah disagrees with that assessment. The protagonist grows wary. Will reminds the girls that they're on a mission. Julia replies that they are well aware of that. She adds that they need to find out if there is a unique specimen in the area that is causing the so-called parade and asks if she has understood everything correctly. Will says that the most important thing is to move as quietly as possible. He suggests going deeper in. The team sees that there is absolutely nowhere to hide ahead. They will most likely be spotted by the pack of wolf monsters up ahead. Noah cheerfully releases Ray, announcing that it's his turn. The protagonist is quite relieved, looking forward to his first job. The team has already moved a decent distance away from the estate, so they'll be able to proceed calmly from here on out. The border guards are counting on the monsters to avoid them, thanks to Ray. Julia notices that the monster wolves are indeed retreating. Noah asks if that unique specimen is among the monsters. After thinking for a moment, Julia says it couldn't be in such open terrain. She hums thoughtfully. She asks if Noah has seen the unique specimen before. She replies, shaking her head. Julia asks with the same question. He also says no. Julia turns to Ray, certain that he must have seen the unique specimen, since he is a monster himself. The protagonist shakes his head, since he has been locked up the whole time. Julia realizes that now everything depends on her. She didn't expect this turn of events. Noah asks if the unique specimen has any special traits. Julia explains that outwardly, they don't look much different from ordinary monsters. Unique specimens can be identified by their aura or gaze, even if you're seeing these creatures for the first time. Noah gasps. Julia honestly admits that it's better for them not to encounter unique specimens. Will informs them that they'll soon be out in the open again and advises them to stay alert. Ray knows there's no need to worry. He has already found his healing spot. The team freezes, looking around, and Julia gasps in admiration. The protagonist recalls that it was in this very spot that he found his Ashi, and he is overcome with nostalgia. Will reports that there aren't any monsters nearby. Julia remarks that she didn't even know it was so beautiful here. Just then, Noah tugs at the protagonist's sleeve and suggests they go to his home. Ray freezes in surprise, while Julia and will turn around. Noah, smiling, reminds the protagonist that his house is right nearby. The girl suggests that the protagonist go there. He is still confused. To be continued. Thanks for watching. Write your feedback in the comments. If you like the story, please like and subscribe. See you soon.